I think around 2000, I got this call from an RCMP officer, Dale Bogle, and he was looking for something of Kenley's that I would have with DNA on it. Dale Bogle told me about this Andrew Johnson guy and that possibility that he had murdered another young person, girl, in Halifax, and they had taken certain evidence from that apartment that they found, and this is what they were looking to match DNA against.
Andrew Paul Johnson was a gentleman who I was investigating, and a lot of other police officers were investigating. He was a very strong person of interest in some very serious crimes in the Halifax area. Andrew is presently in BC in jail.
For 4 days, investigators scour this property in Shad Bay.
We are in fact looking for urine remains at this time.
We know the home belongs to Tom Johnson, brother of Andrew Paul Johnson, who is currently incarcerated in a BC prison on sex-related charges.
Andrew Paul Johnson was convicted of kidnapping and unlawful confinement.
Andrew Johnson has long been suspected of several unsolved murders in the Halifax area.
Andrew Paul Johnson has been long considered a suspect in the case of Kimberly McAndrew, who went missing more than 20 years ago.
There were several high-profile disappearances in the late 80s and early 90s. 18-year-old Andrea Lynn King landed at Stanfield International from British Columbia in January '92. Her body found in Lower Sackville that December.
In 2001, he was declared a dangerous offender. That status was revoked in 2006, but put back in place 2 years later.
21-year-old Stephen Michael Hall vanished in the summer of 1996. His remains were found near Chester later that year.
In 2011, the National Parole Board denied his parole. At the time, the board stated, "You continue to be a suspect in several homicides in eastern Canada." Police are remaining tight-lipped about this search. Today, Sergeant Elaine LeBlanc said the Mounties aren't prepared to release any further information at this time. This, he says, all in an effort to preserve the integrity of the investigation.
I first heard about Andrew Paul Johnson several years ago, and it really stemmed from information that I got from my mom. And she had heard through one of the police that Andrew Paul Johnson would have been at Corcombs Island, or he was possibly in that area the weekend that Kenley was in Corcombs Island as well.
Andrew worked in the area of Corcombs Island. According to a family member, a Matheson family member, they were informed by 2 RCMP officers that Andrew Johnson was at Corcombs Island the weekend that Kenley was present.
They told me that Andrew Johnson and his girlfriend were at Ralph Tomlinson's that weekend in Corcombs Island for supper, and that they had both camped at the Evans Park that weekend, Andrew Johnson and his girlfriend, and that they had found the car. It was a white car that Andrew Johnson was driving in 1992 when Kenley went missing, and he had disposed of the car the 1st of October, which was his normal MO in the rest of the cases that were concerned with him.
So if potentially Kenley did come in contact with Andrew Paul Johnson, maybe they did create a friendship. From what I understand, he wasn't like the obvious, people like look at him and say he's a serial killer. He was like supposedly quite charming, and if Kenley and him did strike up a friendship, I do wonder, could something have happened the next weekend from this friendship from the previous weekend?
But this is like, just burned in my memory, and it's like Dale Bogle specifically telling me that Andrew Johnson and his girlfriend were at supper that night in Corcombs Island at Ralph Tomlinson's, that they did camp at the Evans Park that weekend, that they did find Andrew Johnson's car that he sold the 1st of October. Like, those are facts that I was told.
Recently, we tried to really nail down like whether he was at Corcombs Island and where did that original statement come from, because I know my mom is fairly confident that she had heard that like directly from one of the police.
I worked with Andrew Johnson at the Windjammer for, I think it was 2 to 3 years. I went to the casino with Andrew Johnson, and I had drinks with him a few times, and I took him on errands. A typical night running errands with Andrew Johnson, he would call me into the night, and I would take him to like a shady area, and he would speak to prostitutes and ask for crack dealers by name. Andrew Johnson, when he was sober, he was creepy around girls, but when he was drinking and on crack, he was even creepier, and you always got the feeling that he definitely would not be able to control his impulses or his desires if he was on crack or drunk. When I heard Andrew was arrested and got a dangerous offender status, I was not surprised. It was just like, oh, okay. Like, I definitely was like, I could see it. It wasn't shocking.
Well, the police, when I was arrested, found what they called items in my car that were very concerning for the police and the community. And I understand that there was, duct tape and a mask, a Halloween mask, and handcuffs, like toy handcuffs. And I had I'm a chef. I had a knife under the front seat of my car. It was actually like a Chinese knife. Psychology reports say I have psychopathic tendencies. I think it could have went much worse if I hadn't been arrested at that time. So exactly how worse, I would only be speculating as to, what could have happened.
Are you familiar with the name Kimberly McAndrew?
Kimberly McAndrew, yes. I remember that name.
Do you recognize this young woman?
Yeah, I remember that picture, yeah. But no, I've never met her or seen her.
Did you kill Kimberly McAndrew?
I did not kill Kimberly McAndrew.
Where is her body?
I have no idea where her body is.
Are you familiar with the name Andrea King?
I recall the name Andrea King, yes. And again, same thing. I've never met or seen her either.
Did you kill Andrea King?
I did not kill Andrea King.
Are you familiar with the name Stephen Hall or Stephen Michael Hall?
Stephen Hall? Not really, no.
Does this man look at all familiar to you? Blow up of it.
No, I don't recognize him. No.
Were you involved in his disappearance and murder in the Chester area in April of '96?
I was not involved in his murder or his disappearance, no. I've had some bisexual experiences when I lived in Eastern Canada. It was usually like a one night sort of thing, never any relationships or anything of that. That they, on the down low, I think they call it. That's the expression they use. The phallometric testing that they did better known as the PPG, where they attach you to attach your penis to a computer to measure your arousal. The test showed that I had the same arousal to men as I did for women. So.
Where were you living in September of 1992?
That's right around the time I maybe be living in Bridgewater. And I worked at the Swicker Inn in Lunenburg. I was a chef at the Swicker Inn, and I worked there for maybe a year, about that, yeah. Just a small restaurant right in Lunenburg. On my days off, I used to like to sort of I like the outdoors, picnicking, camping, that sort of thing.
Have you ever been to the Ovens campground?
Oh, the Ovens, yeah. I've been to the Ovens campground, yeah. But, yeah, maybe once back in those days, yeah.
Have you ever met or have you ever known anyone named Kenley Matheson, or perhaps Ken Matheson or Alan Matheson?
I don't know Kenley Matheson, no. I've never met anyone by that name.
I'm going to show you a couple pictures of Kenley.
Sure.
Just that's one of the missing posters. Does this person look at all familiar to you?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't look familiar to me at all. He looks like a young man. Good-looking young man. I don't know Corkham's Island, no. I'm not sure. I've never heard of that. I don't recall anyone named Ralph Tomlinson, no.
Have you ever been to this house?
I don't ever remember this house, no.
Does it look familiar to you at all?
Not at all, no. It's a nice house. It's big. But no, it does not look familiar.
How do you explain the fact that these investigators have you at the Ovens campground the weekend of September 12th, September 13th in 1992, and then at the Tomlinson residence that weekend for supper?
I would agree that I was at the Ovens campground, but I do not recall going to any dinner at Corkham's Island with the Tomlinsons. The fact that the investigating officer places me there is, I would have to question what evidence, or why would he think that?
What, if anything, did you have to do with Kenley Matheson's disappearance in September of 1992?
I'm sorry to hear that Kenley Matheson has disappeared, but I honestly don't know him or know anything about his disappearance. The police in Halifax believe that, or have stated that I'm a primary suspect in several unsolved cold case murders in Halifax. It's actually a ploy, or a strategy that the police use to keep people like me in prison. I'm not saying that I don't deserve a prison term, because I do. You know, I tried to lure young girls into my car. You know, you can't do things like that. No, I feel, very, very sorry for what I did, and I regret what I did, and I accept a prison term, but it's time for me to move on, right?
I definitely believe that Andrew Johnson had something to do with Kenley's disappearance.
I have never met Kenley Matheson, and I have nothing to do with his disappearance.
If he did do it, he would have had a pattern and a routine that was foolproof.
Did you kill Kenley Matheson? I
did not kill Kenley Matheson.
When we first arrived on the Friday, there was a friend of theirs from the local area. And I remember thinking, what have we got ourselves into? Because they weren't so friendly. They were all sort of a little bit caught up in talking amongst themselves. Eventually, they kind of talked to us. I mean, you know, everyone was very friendly. But I remember thinking at first, you know, where are we kind of thing, you know. I can't remember what he looked like at all.
Is there any possibility his name was Andrew?
I just can't remember his name at all, no.
To remember some finer details like who came to dinner, or, you know, that could have really have been anyone. Our house was really always open to everyone.
I mean, who knows? Maybe I was there. It's possible.
I think it's definitely possible that Kenley Matheson crossed paths with Andrew Johnson and or probably many other people. That wouldn't surprise me in the least. That was an area that we know Mr. Johnson was hanging out in. If these guys are out on a Friday night at a bar, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But again, as an investigator reviewing the case, what good does that do me? Because I have nothing definitive.
When I'm asked about Kenley Matheson, I don't know if that doesn't seem like the Andrew that I know, because Andrew wasn't a very big guy, and I'm not sure how big Kenley was, but I don't think that fits the Andrew Johnson that I know.
As it turned out, they did have the sneaker, and there was nothing that matched with Kenley's DNA from that apartment, and they also did not find anything in the car.
In regards to Kenley Matheson ever meeting, speaking, seeing, or being in the same room as Andrew Johnson, I can tell you without any question of a doubt, I have never come across anything that confirms that. Nothing.
What I can say is that there is no evidence to date that links this individual to Kenley's disappearance.
I can't think of anyone that we met or Kenley met that weekend, except for the three that I've mentioned. The guy on the Friday and the couple on the Saturday. There was no time. We were in the house, we were with her family, or out on the ocean, and just otherwise the three of us. I mean, even the night out, as I remember, we were just the three of us.
Anytime there's a case that they can't solve, they seem to blame Andrew Johnson. And I'm not saying he's innocent of all of them or guilty of all of them, but he definitely seems to be the person they like to blame everything on.
It's possible that the police are just trotting his name out every once in a while when they don't know what became of Kimberly McAndrew more than anybody else. So they find some pretext upon which they can get a search warrant to go to Andrew Paul Johnson's brother's place in Shad Bay and dig it up and say, yes, we have some evidence and we're trying to find something here, trying to find Kimberly or find what happened to her.
The fact that the police came up with all these reasons behind why they believe I'm involved is more about keeping me in prison than anything else.
Little when I used to rock them and sing to them and tell them stories. months. He's in my mind all the time and in my heart forever.
I distinctly remember, even as a very young kid, how smart and quick-witted he was.
When Kenley was born, Sarah phoned from the hospital in Antigonish, and she said, "Are you ever going to use the name Kenley?" I said, "No, I had the opportunity to use it, and I didn't use it, and I'll never use it. So you go ahead and call your little boy Kenley." So that's where Kenley came from.
Kenley's personality, I would say, would be more on the quiet, reserved side.
He was quiet, reserved, an introvert, I would say.
And he did not need to be the center of attention, but yet he thrived on just living life and experiencing things.
Very intelligent, loved outdoors and adventure.
And he was fine being by himself, but he also had a lot of friends that he got along with.
Kenley had, which nobody who didn't know him would know, had just a wicked sense of humor.
Very typical of the area, which is a very dry, sarcastic sense of humor. He had a very quick wit.
He was an avid reader.
We both loved Stephen King books. That was one of his favorites.
He read all the time.
Kenley did very well in school. He excelled in school. If you talk to any of his teachers, he was just an excellent student.
He played baseball. He really loved hockey.
My dad was his coach, and I also spent hours and hours at the rink all over Cape Breton, all the different rinks. He also played baseball, Little League in the summer, and that was all the boys from Glendale.
He was a fierce basketball fan, loved to watch basketball on TV, though he didn't play it. He was also a Montreal Canadiens fan, so loved watching hockey.
We grew up on Cape Breton Island, mainly in Glendale. It was a wonderful place. We had forests and rivers and ponds, and we had a farm, and we had cows, and we had clubs. He was in Scouts, and we had baseball and hockey. So it was a very full life.
The property is 140 acres. So they had a very large playground. It went down as far as the river, which you can't see, and it was 1.75 miles back from the river. This was the local ball field. So as you can picture, just big enough for the bases. At that time, when they grew up with this acreage of property, they were able to go freely all over the property, which they did. And there was no such a thing as, where are they at, or did somebody take them, or, it was a very freeing time to grow up as a child and just sort of explore as you wanted without any restrictions. You had some restrictions. You had to be home for supper.
Kenley was definitely independent. That would be maybe number one on the list of words to describe him. From when we were young, we were able to just go out into the world and explore it ourselves without anyone looking over our shoulder. And we did have, fairly young parents. My mom had Kenley when she was 19 and my dad was 21. And it was a time where everyone trusted the world and everyone knew their neighbors. I always felt like Kenley and I were in charge of our own entertainment. And even if we went to the river, I don't even know if you would have known. We might have been gone for half a day, and I don't remember telling you or clearing it with you that we were going to go across the Trans-Canada over to the river. Kenley loved being outdoors. Winter, spring, summer, fall, he was always outside exploring what adventures there were in the woods. And I would say that's probably one of his favorite places would be in nature and exploring nature in some way. Like anything to do with canoeing or hiking or camping, that was right up his alley.
Kenley and his father built a treehouse in here. And they went over to the local sawmill and picked up slabs.
I remember that we picked 4 trees and then nailed the slabs to the trees to make the structure.
Yeah, your father probably would have.
Yeah, Kenley really liked to build things.
Yeah, but your father probably would have picked out, with them the 4 trees or how you were going to put this together.
They made forts and snowmen and, used their imagination unbelievably.
We used to eat these. These are like little clovers, so you can pull these out and then get the sweet stuff out of the ends of these.
That's what the honeybees do.
It's good.
There are also other things here. They were called sours that were really good. They were little small things.
Yeah.
And
that's why our immune system was so good. We ate everything out of the earth. I used to have a yellow t-shirt, my favorite t-shirt, and it had a duck on it. And it had a constant brown patch on my belly because I would just pull carrots out and just rub my shirt with the carrot and eat the carrot. Like I'd be in the garden just eating, like that. And we would come up here to eat blueberries or any kind of berries that were in the fields. I think I actually ate dirt.
Oh, you did. I have a picture of you eating dirt down in Troy. Kenley and Tanya, who were buddies, and had Kayreen upside down in the dirt. She was probably 2.
We were, Kenley and Kayreen. It's like the names just go together, and we were always just kind of together. And, Kenley is just part of me. Like, one of the psychics said that she, asked if we were twins, and she's never seen pictures of him, and she said, like, you have a twin energy. And a lot of people, commented throughout the years that we did look like twins, and so he's part of me, here with me all the time.
So we've just sort of made a loop around the 20 acres in the middle. That was the cleared land, or is the cleared land, and we're heading back down to the house again.
So of course, you probably wouldn't have spent a lot of time as much as we did out in the fields, and this view for me is, I always get a little choked up whenever I look at this view because you can see, Kenley's window from this view. So our bedrooms were facing, always the sun would come up in the morning on the east, and my room is on the right side and Kenley's was on the left, and this view just it brings me back to childhood for sure. Puts a big lump in my throat, but this is our land, our stomping grounds from when we were kids, and it was a really good place to grow up until we were teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah.
The tide turned when they were teenagers, and they wanted to be in town where the fun was and their friends were. And
I do think when the teen years hit and we started to go to school in Port Hawkesbury, that was really a turning point. And then when my parents got divorced, which would have been basically we were 13 and 15, and we were faced with a decision to live with my mom or live with my dad. And my dad was moving in town. Like, it was basically like we looked at each other and we were like, okay, we're going to move to town.
You have to check out these albums.
It was
I know.
It was Hi, Jamie. How are you? Welcome.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
I have a picture of you in your underwear.
Oh,
I can't wait to show you.
Sweet.
Look at you. Look at you.
Oh my goodness, that's one of my
Isn't that you right in the middle?
No.
That is you.
Wow.
That is you.
That's a long time ago.
That is him, right? Look
Look at Morris.
Wow, we had some pretty hot friends.
I know, look at Terry. Holy cow.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Was Kenley there that night?
He was. I have pictures.
I know, but why isn't he? Do you have ones with him in it? Oh, okay.
Wow.
Look at Mary Jo. What's she doing?
Look at you. Do you have clothes underneath that?
Yeah, probably. I look so tanned. Oh my gosh, you guys look so cute.
These pictures are hilarious.
In frumpy clothes.
Aww.
What'd you say? Frumpy clothes.
Super cute.
That was styling at the time.
I know. You guys look adorable.
I was just talking about your styles.
It's not the same. You look a little bit better now, too.
Yeah, I know. There's the couch, though.
Is Kenley dating by grade 12?
No. I think Selena is the longest person he's
Yeah.
ever dated. I scared him for like, yeah.
You know what? He was an awesome guy. He was.
You just said he was so smart.
Yeah, he
That's what you
was.
just
He
said.
was. He was smart.
So
He was
smart.
so intelligent. It was crazy. Yep. I mean, for 2 years, grade 11 and grade 12, which are obviously pretty fun years of high school, we lived at Kenley's house.
I
mean, we did. We
Yeah.
every Friday night and Saturday night. Kenley's
Monday,
house.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Say.
Well, you were there a lot.
3 times. Hey, let's go to Kenley's house. Like our parents knew we were there.
My parents had no idea.
Oh
The Mathesons landed and Harold Street turned into more of a livelier place.
He's always quiet. In front of me, he's quiet, but then he'd be like, he's fucking smart, eh? Like, him and my buddy St. Clair Stewart, they were like super intelligent. Like, I consider myself intelligent, but they were like beyond that, like they were above.
Yeah.
Like, they were just like, and then Kenley wouldn't say much, and then when he did, it'd mean something.
One person jumped in to protect me. It was Kenley. It was Kenley. One fucking person. It was Kenley.
He jumped in.
He jumped in
No
with
way.
Ken Ferg and Jason.
And
Dean.
how much did Kenley weigh and how tall was he?
88 pounds.
Imagine me and him sitting beside each other against these two freaks. Exactly.
When you had a drink in him.
Yeah, he did. You didn't see that.
He liked to pick. He liked to pick a fight.
Yep.
Even
Yeah, he
his
was
own
a
friend.
little lippy when he got drinking.
Chippy.
He was chippy.
Chippy.
But a little lippy. Yep.
Chippy and Lippy.
Yep.
Not to females, just to other guys.
It just felt like he was an old soul.
Exactly.
Like he'd sit
Oh, he
back.
was an old soul. He was an old man.
Like you know, like I think he just tolerated
I was just
that.
thinking about this. He didn't, like he didn't play high school hockey, he didn't play high school football, like he didn't play the sports, but he hung out with everybody, right? And people wanted to hang out with him.
But do you remember those days, like at Acadia in the first, because you guys had that chemistry class?
I can remember the last day I saw him. We were crossing paths. We had a class together, and then we had a class where we would actually cross paths. Like he would be on the way to, you know, the nutrition classes were, and then there was where the biology, and that was the last time I saw him. We were crossing paths, and I remember I was having a really down day. Because we had both taken 2 years off, both going back to university. I didn't feel like fit.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, I'm just having a really hard time here. And I remember seeing him because he was me. He was my high school. He was, you know what I mean? And I thought, I just want to talk to someone who maybe feels like I do.
Yeah.
Like, do you just feel like you fit here? And I remember walking past him and just kind of, hey, and then kept walking. But I often think, God, I'd love to go back to that day and that time and pull him off the path and say, help. How are you doing here? Because it kind of sucks. It wasn't good. Those first 2 weeks were not, it was just hard to find your rhythm.
I know you feel bad though, and I can tell, and I don't want you to feel bad. It really wouldn't have changed anything, and I never got, I know I always did feel supported by you, so I can't even imagine how awesome you would have been if you were being a little bitch. I'm kidding. I feel with Kenley that there was always an element of mystery, and the part that I didn't quite understand, and I think no one really understood. And I do know he may have struggled with depression at certain times in his life.
As Kenley got older, I did notice that he was had a pattern of being quiet, more quiet than usual, being down, and what I would describe as being depressed.
I don't know necessarily emotionally how he was doing or what was going through his head. That wouldn't have been his style to really share a lot of his emotions and feelings that were going on.
I am bipolar. And I also thought that he might be bipolar too. It seemed to me that it ran in a 3-year cycle. So that was in grade 6 and grade 9 and grade 12. And the year that he went missing in 1992 would have been like the 3rd year of a cycle.
A lot of people would say they could never really understand Kenley, and that he was hiding something, or there was some deep eddies of the soul, that he was being mysterious. Kenley was much more of a seeker than a hider. I think Kenley was someone who, from a young age, at least during the time I knew him in high school, was someone who was looking for something.
Well, I did notice in grade 12, Kenley's senior year in high school, that things were changing. You know, I wouldn't say it was his best year. You know, he was ready for high school to be finished and really was wanting to go out and find his own adventure.
Somewhere along the line, it was decided that he wasn't going to university.
He did buy a motorcycle, and I remember being on it with him one time before he left. And, you know, that was just, pretty amazing. I know I probably wouldn't be able to do that.
This is a guy who wanted to go have adventures, who bought a motorcycle at the end of high school and decided to drive out and see the country. And I think that sort of restiveness and restlessness, both sort of physically and existentially, I mean, that sort of peripatetic nature of his was mirroring something internally as well. I think Kenley was, and I'm not sure he could articulate what it was that he was looking for to feel sort of complete, or whether this was just something that he wanted to do or felt compelled to do. But that inability to articulate that at a young age probably resulted in people thinking that he was suppressing something or hiding something. And I think it was quite the opposite. It was exploratory.
I do remember the day that Karen and I were sitting on the hill by the causeway and
watching him ride his motorcycle across the causeway, and he was gone.
There was this article in the paper that this guy had written about him walking to Brazil to save the rainforest. And that was what was in Kenley's mind, that he was going to meet up with this guy and he was going to walk to Brazil.
That was quite a shock, but like almost in a good way. It was surprising, but yet not surprising, because it really was something that he would, you know, be compelled to do.
They camped or they stayed in church basement halls. You know, they did talks promoting, you know, saving the rainforest. In turn, they looked for overnight accommodation or a meal.
And I remember getting some letters from him when he hit Louisiana, and basically they had to make their way, you know, like stay with people. They didn't have any money coming in, and ended up kind of throwing in the towel, I think, a few months later and heading back out to Banff.
I met Kenley Matheson in a youth hostel in Banff. I think it was 91. And we were both looking for work, and we both had motorcycles, and we became friends. A few days after I'd met him in Banff, we went to Prince George, because I had a friend who had a job as a foreman of a tree planting company who had told me before I went out from Ontario that if I needed a job when I was out west, I could call him. Ken thought that he would also take the tree planting gig. I think since we both had bikes, I think we were both more interested in going somewhere than really being somewhere, I think. And it was just natural to ride on. Anyway, when we got to Prince George, as soon as we got into town, he crashed his motorcycle. He appeared to look the wrong way on a one-way street and was struck, and the bike was immobilized, and he was relatively uninjured. I don't think he went to the hospital. I don't know if it was the night he crashed his bike. Probably not. But I was thinking today of something a reason why I liked him. And it was, I'd gone out, it might have been because he didn't have wheels. And I went to get some food. And I went to a grocery store and I got some smoked salmon in like a styrofoam thing, some bagels, some cream cheese. I think it was some like watercress. And brought that back and made smoked salmon sandwiches. And he was so impressed. He thought it was so good. And I remember he said, I would never have thought of this. You know, I just felt, I don't know, it feels good when people like what you do. And, you know, I think that's why we were friends, because he liked the things that I did. And I liked that. So I remember those sandwiches and just the way he said how much he enjoyed them, and I would never have thought of that. Like, he was impressed. You know? I would say he had sort of a star quality. He was attractive in a way that just made me feel that he was somebody that was worth knowing. Kind of hard to define.
Well, I know what appealed to Kenley about tree planting was the money. Like, he didn't mind doing hard work, and he was willing to do the hard work if he earned the money. And there was really good money to be made in tree planting if you were good at it and fast.
Kenley, I mean, he thrives on hard work and challenges, and so I think that's why tree planting was so appealing to him, and he likes to make money.
I don't think he thought he was an environmental crusader, planting trees and saving the earth. I think it was just a job, and we thought there would be some money in it. But it's hard to turn a decent buck at that game. And he was about like me. I think he was a little better than me, but not a star in the tree planting game. It suits people who are very driven, focused on money and numbers. And I think we were just looking for an experience and kind of wanted a balance of like making money, but also having an enjoyable experience, which tree planting is not. Really not. Although we both went back the next year and did it again.
I do remember him telling me like how challenging it was and just the conditions, and I think it's just something that it would be impossible for someone to understand that didn't go through it. But the friendships he made, I think, felt very deep and real.
The trip to Mexico occurred after the tree planting season, which would have ended in August, I think. And then we went to Vancouver and shared an apartment there for a few months. And then in December, we decided we would leave Vancouver and travel to Mexico, Central America. There was talk of Costa Rica. We didn't get that far.
I really don't know very much about that trip, other than he went to Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize, because, again, I asked him when he came home, and he wasn't talking about it.
We took a bus from Vancouver to San Diego, and then crossed the border into Tijuana, and traveled down the Baja Peninsula as far as we could go, and then there's a ferry from, I think the little town is La Paz, and over to the mainland Mexican city of Mazatlan, which is a big city. And it's an overnight ferry. It's a pretty good distance, and so it's big open water. It's the Pacific Ocean, and we were playing cards, and there was an Australian guy, and he had this bottle of mezcal. It was a round bottle with the worm in it, and we weren't particularly cautious in our consumption of it, But I remember finishing off the bottle. Somebody ate the worm, I think. I'm not sure. I can't remember. And I didn't think too much of the fact that Kenley wasn't there with us anymore. He was apt to do his own thing and find other things to do from time to time, you know. But I did go looking for him and found him up on the top deck. It was a big boat, a few hundred people on it, many levels and rooms. And he was on the top deck on the other side of the barricade where the lifeboats are, with nothing between him and the ocean. He was looking pretty comfortable out there. He wasn't certainly not worried about his situation, because he must have, you know, consciously climbed over that barricade and wanted to be close to death. He looked a little like Captain Ahab or something, you know, like I immediately said, you should be on this side of the railing. It's not safe out there. And he complied. And I don't have a clear recollection of exactly what happened after that. The next day, I did bring it up to him. I mentioned how close he'd come to disappearing off the face of the earth, and he was. He said he had no memory of it, but was shocked.
So what do you think would have happened had you not gone up there looking for him?
I think probably he would have just come back over. Probably would have just climbed over the barricade and come on back. Probably. But there is a chance that he would stumble and fall from that point, which that's a pretty good possibility. You know, it's probably a coin toss whether an inebriated person would survive that. And I guess there's also a possibility that he would have he would have jumped into the ocean. But I'm just supposing that, based on my supposition that he was somehow drawn to the experience of facing death. If he had gone over the railing in the middle of the night, in the middle of that ferry crossing, he'd almost certainly never be seen again. I think that's fair to say, because it would have been completely unnoticed, and there would be no way that anybody could survive the night, you know, let alone an inebriated person. And yeah, you just sink and just become part of the ocean. Of course, that's something that I recalled later when he did in fact go missing.
My name is Marie Carpentier. I'm from Quebec, Montreal, around Montreal. If I remember well, I first met Kenley in late April 1992. So I probably speak with Kenley the first time around the fire pit, coming back from a long day at work. and we started chatting, and where are you from, what do you do, and all that stuff. And my English was tiny, little at the time. And I remember he was laughing about my name because he tried to say Marie in French rather than Mary, because everybody was calling me Mary, and I said, my name is Marie. So he tried to say Marie and Marie. So we had fun with my names. And I remember that. That's maybe the first time I spoke with Kenley. So actually this is my diary from 91, 92. So here is pages about Kenley, or something I mentioned Kenley. And I found some pictures also in this thing. That's Kenley. We are on a ferry crossing. Can't remember the name of the lake, but around Burns Lake. So it's east of Prince George, northeast. So this picture is Kenley and myself, and we are chatting, not working at all. This one is after supper. There's Mike, Rich, Hamish, Christine, Lance, and Kenley with his purple baseball cap. That was a clean one, not the one to work with. That was a clean baseball cap. And we don't see his eyes, but you have a good spirit about the feeling in those tents. You see a bunch of dirty young human being, tired and happy to have a good meal and a good cup of tea after. So first thing I know is Lionel phoning me with Kenley saying, hey, we are back from tree planting, we are in Montreal, what if we go out tonight? So we spent a couple nights together, went to a party to Lionel's with his friend, went to see The Might Be Giant, we spent times, Kenley and I, walking around Montreal, driving around to Mont-Royal, and the friendship was there. We were alone. Lionel was busy, so for me, I was expecting Kenley, my friend Kenley. And one night at we went for a supper at a Greek restaurant in Le Plateau. And Kenley, maybe feeling that his time was running, he shared with me his feelings for me, sharing that he fell in love with me, that since he first saw me, he had something for me, and it was really nice the way he said. It was really, I saw love in those eyes, and I was surprised and I was shocked, and I did not respond to those feelings. I said that I was not available for that because I was going through the end of a long relationship, and I think I did not mention Hamish, but Hamish was my soulmate. So I was not available for that, knowing also that Kenley was going back to school in Nova Scotia and I'm in Quebec. So I was not at the same place as he was. When he left Montreal, he was probably sad, mad, en peine d'amour, like we say in French. I don't know if you'd have that in English, but his heart was broken, sadly. He was challenging his fear going back to school, going back to that life where he's not sure he belongs to. So hitchhiking from Montreal to Nova Scotia, I cannot imagine being in his mind. He probably hit a wall somewhere on the road. I don't know how he did it. We never spoke after that, but I can easily picture Kenley on the highway with his thumb up, thinking, a lot of thinking and being sad and not ready.
I do feel when he came back from tree planting that year, it was almost like he was probably a different person. You know, his perspective had changed, his beliefs had probably changed.
When I ran into Kenley again, and I say again, he had gone away for a couple of years when I had gone to university along with some friends from Port Hawkesbury. And he returned, and There was a bit of a sort of a Heathcliffian aspect to him. He was sort of brooding, and I think he had read a few philosophical books and maybe some cosmological tracts, and he was quite interested with the sort of the larger meaning of the universe.
And then he's trying to fit into Cape Breton expectations, and I do suspect like he felt that.
I recall thinking that Kenley's a fairly exotic character all of a sudden. I mean, this is someone that I grew up with in a small pulp and paper town in Cape Breton, and here he's coming back and telling stories of driving across the country and hitchhiking, crisscrossing and sleeping in someone's house in the Bible Belt. He's seen a lot of things that I could only have imagined at the time. I remember feeling slightly envious that he had had the balls to go off and do that while the rest of us were taking introductory English courses.
When you're away, you feel you can just be yourself. Like you break it all down and you 100% get to know yourself, and the things you enjoy are, maybe different than what it might be in Cape Breton or what is acceptable. So I do think there was a little bit of that when he came back.
Again, my overriding impression of Kenley at the time was of someone who was, he was interested in getting back to school, but he was questioning pretty explicitly the purpose of things. Not in a way that, people ask, was Kenley gay, as though that somehow would explain the details of what happened to him, and perhaps that could. I don't think that explains the truth of anything, but it might help fill in some gaps.
Well, I've heard, over the years of other, people that have suspected that Kenley is gay, and I mean, I know he had girlfriends, and I really don't know. I never saw any signs of that.
As far as the notion or the thing that Kenley might have been gay or bisexual, I never noticed that when he was younger.
I think there's a possibility that he was gay.
I don't think Kenley was gay.
As far as I could tell, in the entire time that I spent with Kenley, there was no indication that he was gay.
Who knows, though? I don't know. Who knows? Yeah, who knows really with anyone?
Kenley, as far as I know, didn't have relationships with women. Well, he had relationships with women, but not intimate relationships that I knew. And yeah, I was surprised at that, and thinking back too, because a lot of people liked him.
Is it possible? Yeah, of course. I know people who have decided to go public with the fact of their homosexuality decades after they were the age of Kenley when he went missing.
I do recall that gay people found him attractive. And I do recall that he was uncomfortable with that. But what can you make of that? Or he acted uncomfortable, to me.
From the people and some of the research that I did and the interviews I did and people I spoke to, there is a possibility that Kenley was bisexual, yes.
There was never any indication, either overtly or anything that I picked up otherwise, that made me think that he was gay.
I don't think Kenley Matheson could be gay or bi or whatever. No, I don't believe that.
But I wouldn't be totally surprised either. But again, I was like pretty obtuse, I think, in those days. I just didn't think about that.
Never made a move on me, never tried to kiss me, never tried to grab my hands.
Maybe he was just disinterested. I think, I guess that's part of it. But we never talked about that.
I have never spoken to a male that was intimate with Kenley in that way.
I don't remember a trip to the emergency room in August of '92, so that could quite likely have been not something I was aware of. And he was also 20, so he could have gone to the doctor himself.
When he was in a down mode. It was, you know, lots of sleeping and just sort of like recharging his battery.
One of the things Kenley wanted to do was go down to the cabin and spend a week there, just I think in the quiet and peace.
And the summer before Kenley disappeared, before we went to Acadia, he spent some time down here, and he refurbished the canoe. So there was something he loved, projects and things like that, that led to him spending more time outdoors. And, you know, he didn't mind roughing it or, you know, having to live in the cabin, or obviously he was out planting trees a lot, so it was probably more of a luxury when he was here. And we just spent a lot of time out in this canoe. And that's a couple of my uncles on my dad's side, that was their last memory of him, was him working on the canoe and seeing him down here for those, you know, weeks in August before we went off to Acadia. Even still, I can't believe that he disappeared in Wolfville. To me, it's, you know, just one of the biggest mysteries. But I really don't think that he just picked up and left and didn't tell his family.
Hello? Who's there?
You don't want to talk with me.
Who is this?
You don't want to talk with me.
Kenley?